Welcome to Beyond the Game. My name is Gregan, and today I'm going to be chatting with Grant Rousseau.
Who do I talk to? Someone tell me what to do. And actually I learned, no, I've just got to go do it.
That was probably where you felt like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And that was at Splyce, right?
Yeah, because I was on the verge of leaving esports at this point.
So we both worked at Guild. I was there right from the start, and you came in. Me. And with that, you took on a load of teams, a load of pressure with Guild. So probably your biggest role.
By far the biggest.
The other question we ask everyone about gaming is their greatest ever gaming achievement.
I'd love to be sitting here saying I hit Grand Champion Rocket League.
Well, not yet. I've deranked a bit. Maybe I can carry you up. Make sure to follow for future episodes and let us know who you want to hear from next. I hope you enjoy this conversation as we get to know Grant beyond the game. Grant.
Hello.
Welcome. We've started now. I always feel really bad when I start and it's just instant. It's like a change of voice. But Grant, welcome to Beyond the Game. Excited for this one, mainly because we have a lot of stories together, but you also have a very unique journey to where you got to now. So from a professional standpoint in esports, do you want to talk us through your journey of how you started getting into it and how you got to where you are now as a head of esports kind of management expert?
I always think on it, it's such a ridiculous journey. So I did chemical engineering at university, nothing to do with esports, but I played League of Legends and I wasn't very good. I played it a bit, was very sort of casual. And then in the final year of uni, my friends who played it with me had started to watch or were watching professional League of Legends. So your Fanatics and things, they're all Fnatic fans. And so I was like, okay. And they showed me it. And I was like, I'm actually really into this. I really like this. And I think it was the competitive element as opposed to necessarily the gaming element. And I remember there was Worlds in 2015. That's it. Yeah, there was a World Championship. And I think the quarterfinals were in London. And I went along to that. And I remember going to that and going, yeah, this is sick. Like, this is what I want to do. So I finished uni. I tried to run my own org in the sort of summer off between, finishing uni, starting a new job, and I had a new job lined up. So the summer I ran my own org. I stayed up at the university and did it for 3 months. And yeah, it was a bit of fun, learned a lot, this, that, and the other. Left it all, went and became an accountant in London. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And after 3-4 months of that, I think it was just in the back of my head, like, you don't want to be an accountant, you want to do esports. And I was just, I didn't know where to begin, but I was like, I think I have to have a go at this. So yeah, left accountancy, and then I just cold emailed teams. Literally cold emailed League of Legends teams, go, do you need someone? I didn't even know what. And it was the days where you could do this. We've got days now of job listings and job sites. It wasn't like that back in 2016. So and then CLG, Council Gaming in America, dropped me a note and say, well, we've been looking for a team manager. We kind of like your CV in terms of your background. You might be appropriate. So yeah.
What did your email say then that you were cold emailing out?
I'm trying to think now. I honestly can't remember. I attached my CV and I think it was just, dear so-and-so, my name is this is my background. I believe I'm good at these aspects and these things which will make you appropriate for a team manager role or something like that at your team. Are you looking for anyone? It was a little bit of a, I'll take anything, but I didn't think it was quite like that. I actually can't remember what else I wrote. I think it was just a bit of a...
I like League of Legends.
I like League of Legends. This is who I am. This is my background. But also very specifically going like, because of my engineering background, I'm good at operations. I try to be specific on what I could help on.
Sort of like a traditional CV email application to a job, like a low-end
job.
Like a
mini cover letter where you don't know the specifics of the job, so you're just saying what you're good at and seeing for something appropriate. So very old school.
It's a bit tougher now to do that kind of stuff.
I think it is. I think it's so much because, again, now we're in the days of, like I said, job listings. There are third-party websites to take on the jobs. They all tell you what they're looking for, what they need, how it's done, etc. And even things like esports on Twitter and stuff, it's so easy to reach out to people. So I think it's definitely different to those days where, I was going through Liquipedia looking at trying to find, when it's kind of got the team and it's got like the CEO, CCO sometimes on there, clicking them, trying to find their emails and stuff. And a lot of times guessing so-and-so at clg.net, guessing this. It was a lot of guesswork, a lot of just trying. But I felt like I just had to have a go. And CLG bit, it gave me an opportunity and flew me out. Literally 3-4 weeks after leaving EY, I was in America working with CLG as a team manager in League of Legends. So it was quite a crazy jump. Yeah,
the cold email thing, we've had a few guests who've mentioned, I just reached out to people who I respected and thought, oh yeah, could you get me on board? And all the time they've been speaking about that, I've been thinking, how did I get in? And I remember now, the first thing I did was email JamesBot. And I said, hey, I'd love to cast some of your community tournaments. And that would have been around 2016, 2017. And I just said, I boasted about my Blue Yeti. I was like, I got a Blue Yeti. I got a Logitech C920 webcam. I've got good enough internet and a good PC that I could run the streams as well. And it was just that whole, like, I've got everything you need. And at that time I'd done Insomnia casting.
Yeah,
and so I'd done something on stage with the biggest prize pool in Rocket League history. And they're like, you're overqualified, come in. And I think that's the point we were at back then, where if you were a competent person, you were overqualified.
That's honestly it. If you had esports experience, you were automatically overqualified. And actually it came down a lot to just, are you someone who could translate into esports like I was? So basically, I think, as I said, nowadays, like, it's so much harder. We every job's oversubscribed. Everyone knows what esports is. Everyone wants in. And we're only talking 6-7 years later. So it's crazy how far it's come since then.
And even in roles like casting, we're seeing people like Ian Chambers come in who've got backgrounds in the degree that links to performing in front of camera.
Yeah.
And you've got people who are now working behind the scenes who've got business management degrees and experience in
such
sport
a high
and
level,
all that kind of stuff. So your kind of role that you've got now and have had various different orgs, typically now you need to have experience in business management or sports management. So let's talk through the experience you gained. So you started off at CLG.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Yes, bluntly, not well. So I did one split there. So it's 3 months roughly, spring split. And I just remember, to be pretty honest, like feeling so out of my depth. I think I was very starstruck. That didn't help. I was working with players like Afromu and Huhi and people I idolized, having started to watch League of Legends very consistently. So that didn't help, because I made the classic mistake of like trying to be mates with the players and trying to be their best friend. It's like, that's not what you're here for. You're here to do a job. And then combine that with just not really knowing how or where to add value. So I said I thought I could add value in these places, but I didn't necessarily execute on it, either through nerves or through just the situation was different to how you expect when you get there. Just trying to figure out with the people around, with the coach, assistant coach, like, what can I do, etc. And they're kind of going, well, we're asking you what you can do. Like, we can't tell you what to do. Like, it's a team manager role. I could do all the admin and everything, but they wanted performance aspects of the manager roles, right? So we've all done the admin side, which I could do, but it was more like, how do I build up their goal systems, their performance systems, maybe training at the gym, make sure they eat right, all of these kind of things. And, I was an engineer. I was not a sports management guy. So in that sense, it didn't work out, to be pretty honest. At the end of the split, called me into the office and went, yeah, sorry, mate, we're going to let you go. And, I think I remember said at the time, like, the plan for me was for me to grow with them, and they're going to teach me a lot. But if I remember, I think the split didn't go to plan in the first 3 weeks. They kind of threw me in. I was meant to work with the academy team, and then they threw me into the main team, and it didn't work out. But yeah, I learned so much from that, of both being confident in myself to actually do what I believe is correct, and just kind of like go try things, go make mistakes, because if you don't try, you won't know, and not letting, myself hold myself back. And then also number two, just obviously got an idea of what kind of thing teams are looking for, and seeing what is a performance structure that's successful versus what isn't. So it's just a very sort of trial by fire way to learn how to do this job.
Yeah, and if you don't have people above you who've got the time to support you, I mean, one of the biggest learning curves I've had was through Vitality and Guild, but luckily I had someone above me who could help me. You were that person at Guild, and whilst I was at Vitality, I distinctly remember the start where we had to book all the travel to Gfinity Elite Series. And I remember being like, Gabor, who was my head of esports at the time, the players all need travel. And he went, okay, what are you going to do about it? And I was like, do I need to book it? He's like, yep, here's how we book stuff. Go ahead and book all the travel. Make sure they all get there on time. Make sure they get home. This is how many hotels we need. Let me know how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so that's my job.
Yeah.
Where historically, whenever things happen, you grow up at school, when things happen, it's been organised by someone for you.
I think that's
when
the
you're at
biggest
university,
thing.
it's been organised by someone before you. And when I was at university, I was part of a sports club, and that's probably where I learned the most skills to link up to working in esports. But when you do a sports club at university, the previous year have outlined exactly how you need to run the club, and you've got the structure there. This is how you book travel. This is how you do this. This is how you run a tournament. When you go into esports, for a lot of the cases there is no structure built out because everything's so new. You have to build it out yourself.
Exactly.
And so it's a very unique position. I guess that's what hit you when you went to CLG of, I have to make the performance structure. I have to make the daily schedule. I have to make this.
They had hired me to do that. And if they'd known what to do, they wouldn't be hiring me. Or they would have got somebody in and they would just told them what to do. So I think that's nailed ahead. And I still think it's very much like that in esports where, let's be real, a lot of teams are still figuring out the right directions, just, on a business and revenue side. And so people are still figuring out the right way to go. It might be more at director C-suite level now, perhaps rather than lower down. But yeah, back in 2016-17, let's not pretend no one really knew what they were doing. And I look at the staff around me at the time, there was a director of esports, but the guy was running 7 teams or something like that from, a much smaller setup resource than what is the case now. And it was just him. And then, I've got 2-3 coaches just so focused on the game because that's what I have to do. So I'm sitting there going, who do I talk to? Someone tell me what to do. And actually I learned, no, I've just got to go do it or I'm going to be out of a job for a long time.
So what was after CLG then?
So after that, it was a team, and I'll be impressed if anyone knows or remembers them apart from the owners. It's a team called Mysterious Monkeys. Hilarious name. So they were in European League of Legends, and it was before the franchise, so they promoted in. So I think actually they didn't one of the academy teams promoted in. You can't have an academy team in the top league. So this brand called Mysterious Monkeys bought them. And I absolutely loved them. They were just lovely blokes. But it was far too much too fast of hey, we've got 2 weeks to the split. And I was joining at a point where they kind of gone, right, we want you to be team manager, but actually we want to give you a bit more control. We want you to be in charge of the coaches, the roster, sort of general manager-esque role. So I was okay, and I felt more confident to do that having done CLG. I'm gonna do it this way this time. But I was walking into a setup where the the facility, you can call it that, was all sorted. The players were all sorted, the roster, the coaches were happy because they just kept everything the same from the academy. And that was the mistake. It wasn't ready for the top league. So it was a lot of fun. I loved working with those players, but it was difficult. It was not easy. And we had a lot of arguments, a lot of debates, between us. We changed the roster and we had 6 weeks to not get relegated, basically. And unfortunately, we did get relegated because at that point in the year, there was, I remember back in the season, 6-7 of the teams were the teams that were set in the league every year. They went on to become franchise teams. So yeah, it was really fun. That was where I got to try things and actually I feel be better at my job, but not enough to save the team, to be blunt. And so we got relegated. And so in the nice way, our contracts got let go because I can't remember if they planned to do the lower league, but we had been hired for the top league. So yeah, I'd done 2 splits at this point, which is 1 whole year, and I've been fired once and lost my contract the second time. So it was going really well. But
the next adventure though, that was
probably
when
it kicked off.
That was probably where you felt like, okay, now I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And that was at Splyce, right?
Yeah, because I was on the verge of leaving esports at this point. So what I'd done was, before I went to CLG, I had said, I'm not sure if this whole esports thing's going to work. It said it was very early days. So I got a job at BT, British Telecom, to start in a year's time, like a gap year student kind of thing. So I got that for the following year as a graduate. And I'm like, right, I've got that back pocket for September of 2017. So I did these 2 splits. I went, well, I didn't go great, did it? So maybe it's just time to call it. And I remember a guy called Hans at Splyce, who was I think he was called European Operation Manager, whatever he was at the time. I bumped into him a lot of sort of the team manager meetings when I was with League of Legends. And he was kind of just like, you shouldn't leave. I'm moving on from Splyce. Come work for Splyce. Come replace me at Splyce. I'll introduce you to the owner, etc. And I met up with the owner, Marty, who got on with really, really well, really liked him and saw a lot of bonus. And I just kind of sat there. And I remember I had 24 hours to decide because if I started, it was a Friday afternoon. If I started the job on Monday at BT, you have to do a set period before you can leave. But if you cancel before it, it's fine. So I had till 5 o'clock on a Friday. I think Splyce offered me Thursday night. So yeah, I had 24 hours and I just went for it and I'm very glad I did.
Yeah, and Splyce, you were there for
that's
almost 2 years, was it?
About 2.5 actually, because of kind of multiple roles but growing within. So I did just under a year in Europe with the LEC team where I built that from scratch, that current team and the coaching and the systems, helped kind of redo the facility a little bit that we had and just ran it from an operational point of view. So even just doing the budgeting, the finance, just again, all trial by fire. And then I can't remember quite the dates or about a year in or something like that, Marty asked me to move to America where the main office was to become a director of operations. So I kind of gone from team manager to European operation manager to director of operations within a year and a half, which was quite bonkers. But that was just massive credit to Marty to give me that opportunity.
Yeah, I guess that's quite common in esports as well, to progress through the system, because finding people who can do the higher up roles and getting them in was so difficult at the time, you almost had to look within your organization at the people who you could give that responsibility. And so I guess that's how you worked your way up through Splyce. And then you've got so much in your journey. We'll move on next to, was it
done so many?
Was it Excel next?
Excel was next. I did 2 years at Splyce as director, something like that. It was 2.5 totals. I did director of operations. That became Overactive Media. So they bought Splyce out and I helped all of that. And they joined the Overwatch League and Call of Duty League. So they joined the Overwatch League as Toronto Defiant. And they offered me to go join and work for them in Toronto, which was really nice, kind of same role. So I was like, director of that. But I'd been wanting to come home. I'd been between CLG, Splyce and them. I'd been away from the UK for sort of 3.5 years now. So I just kind of wanted to come home. And so Excel had just joined the LEC. The LEC had just formed and Excel had got in. And so I was just, poor Joel, one of the owners, Kieran's brother, I was spamming his email. I was absolutely spamming it. Joel, please just give me a job. I will come do anything, but I just want to come home, just from a personal point of view.
And that was Excel based at Twickenham in London.
Correct, yeah. So I came in as head of operations. Joel was the COO at the time. So kind of the same job, director, ties to site, operations with performance aspects. So I came in with help us do the LEC to start, but your main goal is actually business operations in the background. I think that's the easiest to forget. When I was at Splyce in America, I went from running an LEC team to doing finance, budgeting, goal management, communication system. I was actually doing nothing to do with the teams. And so that's what I was bringing to Excel. So when we get to where I am now, it's kind of funny how I've kind of ended up back in the teams.
Yeah, so the next stage, we might have met when you were at Excel, but the next stage is where we
chatted at Excel.
Yeah, I think I was chummy with everyone at Excel, just being based in the UK. But the next step was the one where we got to work together.
Yeah.
So we both worked at Guild. I was there right from the start. And
you were there before me.
You came in around Christmas time?
Just before Christmas, around November-ish, I think. Yeah.
And that was what, 2020, November 2020?
Yeah.
And so you come in as head of esports, which was a role that they were filling until they found the right person, and then you came in and you took on that role, and with that you took on a load of teams, a load of pressure with Guild, because Guild was a publicly limited company, and all the other challenges that came with that. So probably your biggest role,
by far the biggest job,
and it was a lot on your shoulders. I'm interested to find out from you, what was the hardest part of that job?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think it was, it's going to sound so corny, but self-belief, because as I've been that operational director roles at Splyce and Excel, the benefit I'd had is I've been quite nurtured during those points. So yes, I'd learned, as I said, from CLG times to keep trying and push yourself forward and all that, and that was great. But also at the same time, Marty nurtured me a lot at at Splyce. And then between Kieran and Wouter, who came in at Excel, Wouter especially took me really under his wing. So I'd learned a lot in a short period of time. Coming to Guild, for that time, I had to be right, hang on, I am running this division. There's no one above me aside from the CEO, and he's not teaching me, he's asking me for results. So it was the self-belief to go, no, I know what I'm doing. I must just enact it. I believe I've learned how to now do the right thing through my experience, through my learning. Just confidence in yourself to enact it, and fight for what is right in terms of the performance structures and systems that I've just learned along the way, that what I think's right. And, there's a world where everything I learned was wrong, and it was just, I would have found that out. But it was just that self-belief to go, you've got to do this now. You can't hold yourself back, go do it. And it was hard walking into that every day when, the other directors around you are, marketing and partnerships are titans of their roles respectively, perhaps from outside the industry coming in. So it was just I did sometimes feel, I remember the director of academy was a guy who was Arsenal youth coach. The director of marketing, I forget her background, but she years in everything in partnerships.
20 plus years.
Absolute killer at her job. So it is just I'm that dude who's done esports for a few years now, responsible for our performance output. So just trying to stay confident with them was quite unique.
Yeah, I guess from my point of view, I could never have noticed that. I think we were pretty open to each other.
It's a good
sign. And I think you kind of held that strength of character when you were in public, but then you were also willing to be vulnerable, and I think that's the key. Is that you can still be a strong position in a business whilst also being vulnerable. And I think one of the big challenges you and I faced was the added hours beyond what was expected of us as individuals. You know, you were part of a business structure that worked on a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, but then also part of a performance structure that worked at weekends into the evenings.
Yeah.
So you had to bear the hours of both online in the evenings and the 9 to 5, which was quite a lot of time online, but also sometimes in person.
Yeah.
And so how did that affect you with and how many hours do you think you were working during the most intense periods at Guild?
I definitely lost track. So I would say one of the, during what was a horrible time in terms of COVID, one of the benefits was we were locked down. So I didn't have a lot else to do. So I would have been curious if that hadn't been the case. But at that time, I was doing your standard 9 to 5, which was a lot with the traditional business and doing esports design. And I think I'd worked till like 8, 9 o'clock most things. So it's about 3 to 4 extra hours, like every evening. And then we had tournaments like most, if not every weekend. There was a point Rocket League was doing it like every weekend at that moment. And I remember like we were very focused on Rocket League at the time just because we knew the team had capability of winning something. So we were very focused on, we were working a lot together. So, if I look at it, was it 37.5 to 40 hour week? I was probably doing like 60 to 70 hour weeks looking back. And I think a lot of that perhaps went unseen in the sense that I'd work the business through the day and I'd work with you in the evening, no sides necessarily seeing each other, but I loved it. Like I was so happy to be in the position of like, I get to do what I'm loving every day, run teams, let's win some trophies, let's do it right. And be on the business side in terms of what esports should be. It never felt like extra hours, I said. Might be different, wasn't it? But yeah, it was probably like 60 plus hours.
And I guess the reward for all that is when things go well.
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate. We did end up winning a regional. And
God, that took some effort.
And it was probably one of the hardest periods I've ever worked with a team, especially with the added challenges of being online, working from home, and not having that in-person connection, that ability to, celebrate in person. How did you feel after we won that regional?
Because it was the same weekend we won our first Fortnite Major, if I remember as well. So we kind of won those, was it first Fortnite Major? We won a Fortnite Major. It was a really good weekend. And I remember, and I'll just be pretty honest, I remember calling my mum, like I think I was bordering tears, if not in tears, because it was just such a relief of like, for me, that was like the first thing where I felt I could say that I had contributed to what I thought would be a good system, and we had put so many hours in that we were hoping the reward would come. And when it did come, it was just a complete flowing emotion, because I remember the CEO called me and the COO called me to congratulate me, which was just lovely, with their time differences. And I was just a bit of a mess, really, because I think it was the hard work release, but it was the validation. And the first thing I did was call my mum, which is what I always do in those situations. So it's just absolutely, because I always wear my emotions on my sleeve when it comes to performing, which can be a problem in this job. But yeah, we know how many hours we put in and how hard we work for the team. I'm glad the result came out of it, because that meant we were doing the right thing.
Yeah, and it was a weird time as well with it being online, because there's only so much celebrating you can do with your team when you're online. Whereas at events, you get to go off and have dinner together.
That's it.
So
and it was like midnight as well, because the game had gone so long. And my housemate just said, "Is everything all right?" Because I was just screaming from my bedroom. So
that was a pretty amazing weekend. I had a similar feeling of the validation, because I had the success with Vitality, but to me it felt like I was gifted 3 incredible players through KDOP, Scrub and Fairy Peak, and it felt like I was just guiding them to a victory and they did all the work themselves.
Exactly. That's what I had with Fortnite. Fortnite won a lot to that point, and I was like, well, we signed the players, that was it. Whereas this was like...
Yeah, not to take away from Nolitho and Devo, they all did the work themselves, but to go from where we were when we were bottom of a regional to grow them up to winning a regional, that was very satisfactory.
Absolutely. It was such a good feeling.
So I guess while we're talking about it, I did want to ask at some point, this is a unique position to be in, where I've got my old boss on the podcast. So I guess be as open and as honest as you want to be.
Oh, great.
What was I like to work with?
Awful. No. I loved working with you because you were so open and honest at all times about your positions. A lot of coaches out there, and it's understandable, it's kind of like, I'm in this job, I want to keep the job, so I'm going to say what they want to hear. And actually, that just doesn't lead to genuine improved performance because you're all holding things back from each other. And it's also on the guy above him, the boss, to help him open up. I think the great thing with you, I didn't have to come in and be like, kind of coach you into talking to me or opening up to me or telling me what the issues were. You were just like, here are the issues. So I was like, oh, brilliant. Like, we can crack on then. So there was that sort of openness was so important. And you've always been like, it's like massive credit to you in that role. You're willing to ask for help when so few people are when you need it and show what's required or what's needed. I think the other thing you were always very good at was like quite good at structure building. So I think where there was times, although I sometimes need to support you in terms of what the work was, you wanted a structure, you wanted systems, you wanted process in place, which was my forte in that sense. So I was able to come and go, right, you know, we should set this as a goal, and let's set up some one-on-ones and do goal tracking systems and, you know, red light, green light, all that jazz. So it was like, you didn't need much guidance, but you just, I think, needed that little push to start diving into that stuff. And as soon as you did, well, that led on to the regional win. So for me, it was just like, yeah, like there's a reason I was super, super happy working with you as a coach. And I think we learned a lot from each other. And, you know, we know things at the end, by the way, things got difficult in terms of the team and sometimes change need because a coach doesn't always fit with the right team, no matter how good they are. But during that Thonolly Devo era, you were perfect for them and you were perfect for Gil, and it all just works because you were willing to try new things and open up. And that's why I was so happy.
I think what's really interesting you brought up there was the one-to-ones that we had, which I think everyone during COVID got lost at times. Yeah. It was very easy to get lost. And I think one of the big challenges for a lot of esports teams was they thought, oh, we can just go online. It's fine. It's the same. But a lot of teams struggled, and that's where we saw massive drop-offs, especially in veteran players who were so used to just carrying on doing what they did. And I think what was amazing about that period was that we had so much interaction as a team, whether it be me with you, me with the players, you with the players, the performance psych with the players. So we had all of these opportunities for people to come out and go, I am struggling, this is what I need. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned from that period was no matter how easy you think it might be for someone to just carry on and keep putting the work in, you can't expect people to keep that up for months at a time. And we just had recently GB athlete, swimmer, come on, and she spoke about her structure. And the way she described it, I was thinking, if that was in esports, there's no way any current esports structure would keep up that amount of work without having direct in-person training support to get people to do those things, because the discipline that any individual needs to perform at the top in esports is near impossible. So that's why I think it worked so well when we were at Guild, is because where you were struggling, I could give you the support, and where I was struggling, you could give me the support. And ultimately, neither of us were perfect, but by having the other person there, you could bring out the bits, bring out the best,
and cover the weaknesses. Because that's it. Like, I don't like, and hopefully the coaches I've worked with agree, like, I don't like working as sort of a boss, you know, below system. It just doesn't work. Like, you know, I like to sit next to the coach and go, right, the first thing I say, how can I support you in what you're trying to achieve? And at the same time, I'm going to try and have you open up to me on what your weaknesses are, or figure them out myself, so that I can then start to cover those aspects for you. And I think we did that super well. And I can't pretend there were times, as I said, during lockdown, it was tough times for all. We know that half the game was battling the players' mental health, but also you and me. And I think actually what was so nice was, like, I think we leaned on each other a lot. So forget the sort of boss thing down, like, we covered each other at difficult times. I remember we had like times where we were just, the game was done and we were just chatting going, mate, I'm so tired. I'm like, yeah, I'm just worn out. And we kind of lifted each other up.
One of my favourite evenings was we both came out of a really tough evening of practice quite close to a tournament. And I went, who you got? Who have I got? And you were like, I'll take this player, and then you take this player.
Exactly, all right, you go talk to him and I'll talk to him. And we were just like,
and we were like, because we just knew there wasn't enough time for either of us to go solo through everyone. We were like, right, let's tag team this. Let's get through the whole and kind
squad. Of support each other, going, right, come on, you do him and I'll do him, and between us we'll figure out, let's go say this. And just there's not many, no, actually, there is no coach I've been through that process with at that depth. And it was, unique situation because of lockdown, but regardless, having that sheer camaraderie with a coach to actually open up to each other, lean on each other, and realize that we can accomplish so much more together rather than this like big open system. So, and as I said, I think that's why we got rewarded with the trophy.
It would have been interesting. Obviously, the timing didn't work out. The Guild HQ now, a fantastic facility, and
it would have been
something you contributed heavily to in terms of the performance rooms and how they look and everything. It's a shame we never got a chance, just due to timing, to work with that together. because working in person in this style would have been
yeah.
very fun. But moving on from Guild, we can talk a little bit more about some of the challenges associated with your role in a bit. Mm-hmm. But I do want to go back and talk about your gaming journey. So you've mentioned League of Legends is the game that really got you into esports. What was Grant playing when he was a little kid at home?
Was so generic. I was that 14-year-old kid playing Call of Duty and playing FIFA. Like, there's just I was that boring kid. So every night, so those Modern Warfare 1s, Modern Warfare 2s, that was my life for 14 to 18. So okay, going really far back, my parents, I think that's what got me into the game. My parents had a Super Nintendo. You know, there's big clunky things back in the day because they'd actually played it and then they were slightly younger. So like, they'll never admit it. Love them, but they'll never admit it that they got me into gaming, but they did. And so me and my brother used to spam Super Mario Kart. Absolutely loved it. And I think that's what started off when we got a PlayStation 1 year and played a bunch of games. But I remember it all really kicked off. Like, I was that kid who grew up with Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty, and just played it every night. And then, you know, as I got older, that transitioned into FIFA with your mate. So really boring journey. You know, if you go on my Steam, 99% of my game hours are in Football Managers, which I think just kind of sums up who I am. I love those like manager style games, but Football Manager 06 through to, I'm still playing now, 23. Yeah, Rocket League and League of Legends came in time, but I was just really, really boring. And it was only in, I did a half a year out of uni to go do a research grant in America. It was part of the course. You had to go to another uni, and I thought, I'll go somewhere abroad. And that was where I discovered League of Legends, because I actually had very little to do. So I was like, I need something else. And I was playing with my friends from America, even in Europe, with horrific ping, but I just fell in love with like, oh my God, this is not FIFA. This is not COD. This is something else entirely, and absolutely loved it. And that's where that came through. And then in time, Rocket League.
So Football Manager.
So
you were born to be a manager.
Because I loved I've always loved football, massive football fan. I watch football as many weekends as I can and go support my local team, Gillingham, as much as I can. I think, as I said, I got into esports, not because I necessarily love gaming, because I love competitiveness. And I think growing up, if you'd asked me what I want to be, I'd always have said a footballer. The problem was I was utterly atrocious at it, you know, as many of us are. So it was never an actual option. But I think that's where somehow I had that competitive spirit. I don't know where it's come from, but it's there. And that's why I've sort of enjoyed esports and brought gaming in.
Yeah, and I guess that you mentioned the Rocket League. You know, right now you're grinding Rocket League a lot.
I don't know. I actually was looking at it. So I played Supersonic Acrobatic Rock Power Battle Card. Right, I had that on the PlayStation.
Nailed it.
3, was it?
It was PlayStation 3, yeah.
Yeah, so I had that. I don't know. I don't remember how or why I got it, but I was like, if I didn't play Call of Duty, I played a bit of that, and I loved it. And I remember my claim to fame was I was, for a very brief period, number 1 on the 4v4 ladder on that, which was because it was a game mode that nobody played. And yeah, this is well before you even did, you know, dribbling. You didn't even go in the air at this point. So I played that, and then I went away, and then I can't remember. I was League of Legends crazy for a few years, and about 4 or 5 years ago, I think Rocket League had popped up. I went, I used to play that. And so I just played a bit. And if you look to my hours, they're extremely concentrated over the last 2 years, but I've always done like stints here and there and then given up because it was too hard and everyone gotten too good. But yeah, a couple of years ago, I just really started getting into it when I kind of fallen away from League of Legends a bit, and almost grand champ. So
close. And you actually play a bit with producer Harry.
Yeah, he's hiding behind the camera there, but there was a point he was carrying me. I think that's flipped now. He'll disagree, but yeah,
he plays too many other things. You're a hardcore Rocket League sweat now.
Yeah, that's it. I'm a sweat. I've learned hours in that game equal results, and yeah, literally a week ago I was 1 division off grand champ. Not anymore. It's been a rough week, but you know, we're at that point. But it's nice. Like, it's the first game I've actually felt like I was good at. So as a personal thing, so it's quite nice to kind of be like grinding a game.
Well, this is a chance for us to ask the same question we ask everyone, which is their top 5 games of all time. Now, while you're thinking on that, people take that as different meanings. They take it as the game which I've enjoyed the most. They'll think of it as the game which has allowed them to succeed in their career the most. And ultimately, it's up to your interpretation.
Sure.
But what are your top 5 games of all time?
I think I have to put number 1, and it's because...
What's number 1?
I can still go back to it. Super Mario Kart.
Really?
And I'm talking the original Super Nintendo one, not any of the the GameCubes on Nintendo 64 ones.
Where it's like fake 3D.
It's like the 2D, yeah, it's fake 3D, yeah. I can still go back. Believe it or not, my one at home still works. It's got this giant American transformer you got to plug in. It's horrific. Still works. And I will still go back and still play that and still love it and remember every aspect of it inside out. So I think that has to be number one because that is what made me a gamer. And I can still play it to stay with my brother.
Mario Kart's come up a few times. I mentioned before we went live, Mario Kart 64 came up.
I'd say not the original then, like the old school. Like
that one was slightly more 3D, but had very similar mechanics.
Yeah.
In the sense it was the early Mario Kart mechanics of your car. It kind of had multiple sprites depending on how much it was drifting.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, this didn't have, there was one drifting ability in it. And to be honest, you didn't often use the drift depending on the character you're playing. It was just like, I remember it so clearly because the AI all follow the same path in the game, just with set gaps between them. So I remember you pick up the weapons and you could just drop them in very specific places and know you'd hit them. And I can still go back now and remember exactly the pathing they take. So I played that so much as a kid and can remember it. So I think that's why that has to be number one. I think number two is, and I'm surprised I'm saying it, but it's probably League of Legends, even though I don't play it anymore.
Been important in your career.
Without League of Legends, I wouldn't have the career I have. I wouldn't have discovered esports. I wouldn't have made my name initially in League of Legends. Like that's how I made my name with Splyce. It's been the jump for everything. And whilst I'm not now, there was that period of my life where like League of Legends was my life. I would wake up in the morning, going to a facility or something, doing League of Legends for the day, going home, and you lived for the Saturday and the Sunday where you play matches. You know, I remember putting my music in the van. They take you to the game, and you know, you felt like you're a part of a team. So I think that aspect of being a part of a team and having it as a career was definitely number two. And then I think I've said all this already, but like number three is probably just Modern Warfare 1, Call of Duty, just because that's what we all played, wasn't it? Like that was I think that was, I'll put it this way, right? That was the first social game I played. Mm-hmm. You know, as a kid, that was the first time headsets were just coming out. People were using party systems. So I would go home and play with friends at night, and that introduced me to the social side of gaming, even though we were probably nightmares to play with those 40-year-old kids on COD. But yeah, that's probably my top three. 4 and 5 are harder. 4, and this is an obscure one, so fair play if anyone gets it. Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
I do know the game.
You recognise
I was a big fan of the original Star Wars games, like all the different ones that were there.
I've played a lot of those. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I played a lot.
When was the last time you played it?
Bounty Hunter.
Yeah.
So ironically, I tried to find a port a couple of weeks ago for PC and was struggling.
So is it a long time ago?
So it has been a while because it was a PlayStation 2 game that never unfortunately carried over. They released it on PlayStation 4 in the App Store, but I never had a PlayStation 4, so I couldn't get it.
Okay, the reason why I asked this, not to try and make you hate the game more than... I'm sure the nostalgia factor is amazing, and it'll probably make it amazing when you go back and play it. But I did a similar thing recently where I went back and looked at some of the old Star Wars games I played, and there was the one, I think it was Star Wars Battleship or something, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the one with the Naboo Starfighter being the main thing that you controlled the whole time. Starfighter.
Yeah.
And I loved that game. Yeah. One of my favorite games. I thought, in my head, I imagined it as I was like zooming through the sky and everything.
Yeah.
I went back and watched a playthrough of it. Firstly, I remembered the game being way longer. The playthrough lasted about an hour. The game was very short. Yeah. And secondly, it was like watching what I remembered in slow motion. Because in my head, like I was going through these mountains, I was like zooming through, weaving through, and then you watch the playthrough and it's like slow motion turning and then going around the corner. So yeah, I think as a kid, that game probably was mind-blowing, and I thought the graphics were unbelievable.
That's the one that gets me, is the graphics. Like, I remember as a kid being like, oh my God, it's so realistic graphics, mate. And you go back now, there's a game I played, Star Wars The Phantom Menace. It was a PlayStation 1 game. I think the reviews slate it. If you go back now, like, it's actually an atrocious game, but you come up with your own stories as a kid in the game. You come up with your own things. You'd repeat actions and repeat levels to come up with a new thing. And I look back and I was like, the graphics are amazing. I watched a playthrough on YouTube a few months ago, and I was like, ugh, what is this game? Like, this isn't even playable. So,
and it's all just blocky, and there's like the old polygons.
All the faces are like 2 black dots for the eyes and 2 dots for the mouth. Like, absolutely nightmare.
Our childish imagination turned it into amazing graphics. Exactly,
which I think Star Wars Bounty Hunter is similar, because I watched a playthrough of it a few weeks back because I was trying to find a port and kind of wanted to feel like nostalgia. So I just ended up watching a YouTube playthrough, and it's only 7 hours long. which is still actually not too bad, but in the grand scheme of things, I remember being, I never finished the game as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's horrifically repetitive. Like, in this game, you press square to shoot your blaster, but it's your only weapon, basically. So you were just, the whole time, just... Like, I don't know how... thumb strength of me as a 9-year-old kid or something must have been outrageous.
I can't wall dash in Rocket League.
There we go. So, yeah, but it was the first PlayStation 2 game I ever got. I remember that very clearly. It was the first one my dad bought me, and I just remember loving it. So That's it. I don't know why I'd have as number 5, but like that's your clear top 4. Where that was a bit different. Maybe 5's going to like. If I think about the games I played, it was probably Age of Empires 2. That was like my first PC game. I kind of spammed.
You didn't put Rocket League in there.
I didn't, did I? Number 5's Rocket League.
Number 5. I'm not trying to sway you, but it's just you got 800 hours in that game.
I know. You said I've put Football Manager in there either, have I?
No. I guess which Football Manager would you put in though?
Oh, that's impossible. It would be like one of the... I think 11 is the one I played the most.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've just become so accustomed to playing those games. Maybe it's not fun anymore. Maybe it's just like... It's part of because I see Rocket League as like less oh my God, I love Rocket League. I do enjoy it. I love being better. But there's an aspect of I like being better at the game and climbing, and there's almost like the competitive reasoning to enjoy it. Whereas like I think like the Star Wars game, there was like a story mode. I think it's that nostalgia of it that hits me way harder. Mm-hmm. So perhaps that's why.
I mean, it's up to you. What's the...
I'm more cynical as an adult, maybe.
Yeah, what is your 5th game then? Because you said Age of Empires, but it sounded like you're...
I played that so much as a kid. That's why. Again, I can go back to that game and the nostalgia just hits. I think that's it. If it's on hours, it'll be a Football Manager as a total or Rocket League. But I think I hate to say it, I'll probably have to say Age of Empires just because that is what I played a tons of kid. Again, I built my own storylines. I built my own scenarios. Like, I miss having the creativity as a kid in gaming. I will say that.
It's fine. I'm not taking it personally. I was just hoping there'd be another Rocket League person. It's all right. We'll move on.
I like winning trophies in Rocket League.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I like Rocket League, so I put it in my top 5 games. But we'll move on then. So the other question we ask everyone about gaming is their greatest ever gaming achievement. Now, you can interpret that how you want, whether that's you playing the game or whether it's the success within your career. I would assume for you
gaming,
could probably
not
do
esports. Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, you could probably do one of both. You could do a gaming achievement of you actually playing the game, and then one of the career success.
That's hard.
That is tough.
I'd love to be sitting here saying I hit Grand Champion Rocket League.
Well, not yet. Maybe by the time the podcast comes out.
2 games out, so can't say that. And that genuinely, I'm not joking, probably would have been it.
Mm-hmm. I've deranked a bit. Maybe I can carry you up.
Gaming's tough. Like, I'm just trying to think, like, because I said, I think I loved creating my own storylines in games. There wasn't necessarily an achievement. It was just more like I always told my own stories. Like, there was probably a moment of completing. Yeah, actually, that's probably it, which is so random. But there was completing the original Super Mario game, but completing, which I only learned when I was older. There's a whole set of special levels in the game. This game had a game within a game. It was crazy how they put it all into this tiny little thing. But completing the 10 special levels, which resets the game with a different skin. Which I don't know if, hopefully most people realise. And bear in mind, I played the game as like a 6-year-old. I did that when I was maybe like 17, 18. So I think in that sense, it was an achievement to go back to this game and actually truly finish it. I think outside that, it's probably hard to say because I've never like seen gaming in that sort of achievement way for me. It's always been a creative or escape rather than a grind. But hopefully I can come back in a few weeks and genuinely say Grand Champion Rocket League.
Well, this comes out in a week and a half's time. So
I've got a little bit of time. I've deranked a bit, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Well, do you want to say an esports one?
The esports, it's torn very easy. So number 1 was... I'm going to put it even. One, you'll like one of them, was winning that goddamn Rocket League. Because...
Regional 3 spring split.
Regional 3 spring split. I have watched Tho's goal... Overtime, BDS, Game 7, where he hits it hits it up and Monkey Moon backflips. I've watched that goal so many times. The highlights are out on YouTube because it's just... So that was the semi-final, wasn't it? So I've watched that aspect so many times. That was beating
BDS twice for the first time.
Yeah, beat them in groups, didn't we? And they were the team, obviously.
There was also the reverse sweep against Wolves in the quarterfinal.
Your famous speech.
Yeah, and you come in at the end.
Yeah, I just something told me that day we were going to win that if we could win one game back, which we did. So I think that, because again, the sheer amount of work that went into it, knowing that. So that's definitely one. And I think the other is, much as I loved all my times, that there was Splyce. They had been a playoff team, but they had always, so 6 teams go to playoffs. There has always been that sort of 4th to 6th, and they'd never broken that barrier. And I was given that year where I was the European ops guy, I got to build and run the team, and I brought in Peter Dunn as coach, and Mac, who's still there now. Mac's been the head coach for years now. And we built such a process of going, right, this is how we're going to break into top 3 and get to Worlds. And we didn't get to Worlds, but that first split, we came 3rd. And we went to a LAN and played 3rd versus 4th. And we got 3rd place. That was my first time being responsible for a team in front of a crowd of, I think it was like 10, 15K and winning and stuff and getting to celebrate that fact. So I think that was the other moment of just like something I'd worked on in esports had represented a result. And it was a good feeling. And
an established esport like League of Legends, moving up 1 or 2 spaces
honestly
is massive.
It was such because it was, it'd only been a split, but again, a bit like Rocket League, I remember the hours Peter worked and Mac worked and maybe I wasn't as effective then in what I did, so maybe I wasn't as connected the amount of hours I did, but I was a part of it, and it was a bubble. Like, it was your life. We lived in a gaming house back in the day, so, we had no social lives or anything, so it was just such a relief to, like, we'd done this thing for 3 months, and we got the result, so...
Well, let's go back to your current part of the journey. So we got to Guild and we stopped at Guild, but after Guild you took a bit of time and had a well-earned break.
Had a nice couple months, 2-3 months off, which was refreshing. I've never done that.
So. And then you came back into esports and you're now at Falcons.
Yes.
And so Falcons, a Middle Eastern team that are building out a European structure. Yeah. And that's your main role there, right?
Absolutely. So the title, I think it's arguably the longest in esports. The title is Director of Global Esports and European Operations on paper. Fancy words is I help run all the esports general, but majority Europe, and it's with a focus in Europe, and I run specifically the operations for Europe. It's not a lot right now. Like, there's not a lot there. We have a CSGO team that's doing decently, and we have some Fortnite players. But there's nothing more than that. And it's done with the mind of, they're having a lot of success in MENA in the Middle East, and they want to try and bring opportunity and brand to Europe. So, another esports brand to Europe that can be built with them in mind. But also even part of the pro aspects of these young Saudi gamers and Middle Eastern players would be an amazing thing, because they want to see if they're good enough for the world stage. And, Rocket League team, we know, like, there's an example of some players who could be good enough. Just combined with just sort of, they love esports, they love gaming, and they want to bring an opportunity like that to Europe. So it's just the chance to build something from scratch that has a foundation already, if that makes sense. It's a very unique one. It's like, it's a complete blank slate, but there is something that's successful with the business, so it's not too bad if it goes too wrong, which, touch wood, it's not so far. So, yeah.
It's interesting because you mentioned how passionate you were throughout your journey, and I think you've really matured in that side of being in management and esports, because the hardest thing when you work in a passion-based industry, whether it's sport, art, music, whatever it is, esports is the same, is if you're very passionate about something, you ride the highs and the lows of your corporate success. And when it comes to something like Guild, you were riding the highs and the lows of Guild as an organization. When things went right, when things went wrong, you're publicly facing and you're very openly vocal on social media about your opinions on things. And it comes from that place of you really care about the thing you work for. And I think it comes with its benefits, but it also is something that I think you've learned to pull back a bit.
Yeah.
And I think maybe with Falcons, this is the first time I think I've seen you do that since, because I heard about you at XL. I saw you at XL. You were very similar there. You lived and breathed XL at Guild, lived and breathed Guild. And at Falcons, you do that, but in a professional way of, when I clock off, I'm off.
I think it's that maturity of, as I finished Guild, and it was happening during Guild, but as I finished Guild, I was realizing I need to build a life outside my job, right? Because as you say, like, when your job is your life, which it was, your day-to-day emotions are so fluctuating because it depends if you had a good day at work or not. So add in a performance aspect of, you're in a job that everyone sees if you're doing well, because you win or you lose, and it's very black and white. So it's a very weird one. So you're riding the emotions according to it, and that is deciding your days and your weeks. And it's not healthy. Like, it's not good for you, you know. It's part of the job, but it's awkward. And so I've learned to step back from that. It was part of the reason coming back to the UK, like I'm living close to my family again now. I play hockey every single weekend for a team with my dad. We're both in the same team still. It's things like that. Like, I'm making a point of being more social and having friends outside esports, of reconnecting with old friends from uni and school and things like that. And it's created a much more balanced version of myself. And it's something I didn't recognize, but I feel the strongest I've ever been in you know, with Falcons, in supporting them and getting them what they require and need, because I feel like I'm a rounded person, as opposed to I am everything into this job, and actually that's not healthy, and they don't get a full good version of you. So maybe I've just got, but I feel like I've calmed down a bit and recognized it's more than just a job, but you can still absolutely love your job.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the advice you and I were giving the players while we were at Guild, but we were hypocritical in the sense that we were just
doing
being
stupid hours as well. Yeah.
Stupidly passionate about our job. I mean, anytime I wasn't working, I was thinking about working and trying to find out a way to work, whether it be streaming, whether it be, you know, working with the business side when I didn't need to, and everything like that. So that's something I'm coming to terms with now. And in particular, this year is one of my big goals, is to be disconnected from the opinions of people I don't know, and also, you know, trying to look after myself outside of the game in terms of social and health side. And actually, this podcast, one of the big things, I don't think people realize this is a chance for me to learn from people I respect. And so hearing that from you now has just reminded me of how important that is. Was that something that you recognized and then just implemented, or did someone else sort of say you need to sort this out in your life?
I recognized it because of how low I was getting, and I'm always I try to be open about my mental health and where I've been. And, you know, I remember like just being at a very, very low point around 6 months ago, just because I think I was just so burnt out from the work I was doing, just combined with like years of that up, down with very little stability. You know, I was living in a different house every 3-4 months, because whether it was changing organization or changing job in the organization, just had no stability. You know, sometimes you're living in their houses and sometimes you're living your own. So I think it was just all adding up to a bit of a moment, which is why I took like a few months off, of just going like, I just need to take a break, reassess and see where I'm at. And this is also as kind of COVID was ending as well, so the timing all made sense. Where again, I think COVID had given me an excuse just to sit in my job for 2 years and do nothing else. So it was self-recognition thing. I think, again, I always like bounce everything off my parents. I'm very lucky to be able to do that. So I remember calling them up and just like, I think I'm in a really bad place, and just kind of falling apart on the phone to them, you know, and them recognizing immediately my dad and mum just going like, oh, this is a serious conversation, you know, hopping in and just giving me a bit of advice. And the best thing to do is to take a break and self-reflect. And I never done that myself before. Actually go, right, well, actually, you know, not what do I want for my career? What do I want from my life? You know, what do I want from the next 10 years? And through that, just going, right, I'm going to start doing this, start doing that, and just kind of take some time. And yeah, I hope the Falcons, you know, I think they've got a more rounded person now. Yeah,
and I think one of the things that I've had to learn, and I guess this is kind of similar with you, is that when you're part of something, that isn't defining you. So when you were at Guild, you were defined by Guild. Everywhere you went, I'm the Guild guy. I'm the Guild head of esports. Let's talk about Guild. Everything in your life was Guild. When you were at XL, it was the same. You know, whenever I saw you at events, I was like, oh, it's the XL guy.
Always in the merch. XL.
Everything. Yeah. And then, you know, now you're yourself who works for Falcons. And that's something I've come to terms with. It sounds really cheesy. I've started introducing myself as Mike more. Which
that's weird to me. I've never known you as that.
and that has been a weird step in my life. I have friends now who call me Mike. I have the Pokemon trading card game group that I go to. Yeah. I'm Mike amongst them. No one knows me as Gregan there. You know, and spending more time with my family where I am Mike. You know, so I think there is an element of that a lot of people in esports are starting to come to terms with, where they've got, this is my esports career and this is my life outside of it. But the problem you've got is, in any passion industry, in the development phase, you do have to go above and beyond.
That's the problem.
So to get to the places where we are, people still have to go through that obsessive, I'm going to do everything in my power to be at the top phase, where they're working those 60, 70 hour weeks, where everything they do is work. And it's the same thing with YouTubers. It's the same thing with any passion industry. So what kind of advice would you give to young up and coming esports people, maybe people in their first year, two, maybe people who are trying to get into it now, around establishing a balance?
It's hard because I feel like I'm talking from a privileged position now because I've done it and now I've got the ability to separate, which is, I didn't have that ability a few years back. I think it's one of those that if you're going into the industry, let's say you've just got into it, you're looking, etc. The crappy news is that it's extremely competitive. A lot of people want in. I gambled years ago when people didn't want in, right? So, and I got away with the gamble. It's not the case anymore. A lot of people are going to want in, and if you want to get in, you're going to have to go above and beyond, whether that's your degree background, whether that's your hobbies, whether that's your, the experience for free or volunteering. I'm never a fan of like doing unpaid volunteering work, but maybe that's when whatever it is, you're going to have to go above and beyond, and you are going to have to sacrifice an aspect of your life to probably achieve what you want to make it in esports. For me, it was social life, right? Like, and stability, and where I lived and what I did. Maybe for someone else, it's sacrificing, being near their family, if that's something that's important to them, or the ability to travel, or whatever it may be. You're going to have to give up something. I promise you that will come back if you're willing to sacrifice it now and put in that effort. And if you stay true to knowing that you're going to have a brilliant time in esports, but you're going to have a tough time as well in the early days, the good days will come. And they will come fast, like unlike most jobs. You'll have the good days within a few years because the industry needs quality. Don't lose sight of that, and just make sure you self-flex on the way. I think you'll have a really good time. You're going to have to put in the hours in the early days. There's no better way to say it, and it sucks. But you will get rewarded a lot faster than other industries. So if you're willing to do that, I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's also just being aware of when that time where you might be able to stabilize is coming.
Yeah.
Recognizing getting that extra paycheck to be over earning, is it worth it? Or is it at that point you go, I'll carry on earning a good amount of money for less work and stabilize then?
Know when your value is greater, and so you can utilize that and sell that. Be willing to take jumps and perhaps even risks to accelerate further. I think those are the aspects sometimes miss. It's easy to come and go, right, I'll do 60 hours a week, but I'm going to stay in this thing for 4 years. I'm like, well, hang on, no, you missed the boat if you did that. So be willing to take jumps and risks within it. And know where your value is. And it's easy to say don't burn out because I did twice, but recognize when you're on the edge of like, this is actually too much, and do step back at that point. Don't go too far with, like, do the extra hours, but don't do the over the top hours. I think it's so easy to say, man. Like, it just comes from experience. I've had a few uni. Sorry, I know this is kind of harping on the same thing, but I've had a few uni students ask about this, and what I've told them, aside from your degree background and blah blah blah, actually, it's grateful. It's like, you have to. This industry is so critical if you're not willing to grow. So you have to be willing to make mistakes, but you have to be so self-reflective on those. And it means you go, I made a mistake. Cool. I cannot make that one again. So I'm going to learn from it. It's fine to make it, not necessarily fine to make it again. That's the thing, because you don't have the time to even afford to be repeating errors and repeating mistakes, because the industry will leave you behind. So you have to be so self-critical, so self-aware, be aware to us. I said this about you as a strength of yours, like talk to people going, how can I be better? What can I do? I've done this, or even yourself, I've done this project. What was good? What was bad? Right, I need to do this. You have to be self-critical and always be willing to grow. And even where I am right now, I try to make a real point, no matter who I talk to, of like, what can I do better? What can I do different? Okay, I still did that error. It's almost become like just a natural thing now. So try and take that on board as well. Like the hours, as I said, but also like the self-reflection. Well,
I mean, even if it's not within the esports industry, I think there's great advice in there. Anyway. For anyone working in any industry. I think one thing to remember as well is passion industries, which I refer to non-traditional industries, but even within stuff like science and journalism and accounting and all that kind of stuff, if you do want to progress in those places, you can accelerate that progression through what we just described there of that passionate overworking, but just recognizing when it could be costly to your own health, whether it be social, mental, physical. For example, like the 3 months following losing out on RLCS analyst spot, I recognized that I was going to take a hit to my health. I knew that it was coming, and I accepted that and said, I'm going to work super hard these next 3 months, and I will probably burn out, but know that it's just for these 3 months. At the end of the year, I will reset.
That's it.
And I can go again. I think I've kind of done that, but there's definitely an element of it's quite a lot easier in practice to say that than to do it. So
yeah, it's weird because it's like I can never turn around to the camera and say like, oh yeah, go burn yourself out. That's obviously stupid. But you do have to take, because I think you have to take these moments and go, I'm gonna have to sacrifice. You can't have it all, so I'm gonna have to sacrifice something for the next 3 months. And if I'm not having a social life because I'm doing a YouTube video every single day, that sacrifice I'm going to make, and I'm going to feel pretty crappy at the end of it, maybe health-wise or lack of socialness or get to my mental health, etc. But as long as I'm doing it for a stint and I'm recognizing it and responding to it and keeping it in check, then you can do these moments where you push yourself. Which, you know, they said you did that after the analyst situation. I remember the content coming out from you was incredible and so much of it. So you clearly take a moment. You should have been on the desk. Like, I mean, you should never have dropped it, but that's just my opinion. I thought that was terrible. Sorry, I'm putting you in a position now.
That's all right. Anyway, I'd love to be back, but to be honest, it's quite nice because it's made me realise the passion for coaching I had. Because
that's nice.
I did a talk at my old school recently where I spoke about the stuff we're speaking about here, and I spoke about my passions growing up and why that's led to me working in esports, even though esports wasn't there when I was growing up. And it was like I loved sport, I loved competing, I loved gaming, I loved public speaking, and I loved human sciences. And it's like, if I combine all of those together, coaching fits perfectly.
Yeah.
You know, using the human sciences for performance, competing, gaming, sports, being in public, speaking, that kind of thing. Then when it came to casting, it was like, it took away a lot of those passions. I didn't get to scratch all those itches I didn't really get to do the performance side as much because performing on camera didn't feel like that to me. And then the human sciences, there wasn't that aspect. And so actually by reflecting in that way, I was like, actually coaching is what I feel more fulfillment from. But then equally, stability in life is sometimes something you've got to look at, and casting often pays more stably than coaching positions in Rocket League anyway, if you're at the top. So there was all sorts of things like that. And I think recognizing what you're suited to, and for you, management, behind the scenes work, is definitely the aspect and performance side. So I guess for you, where do you see yourself over the next 5-10 years? Whether it's esports, whether it's not esports, whether it's performance, what do you see?
Actually, I don't know if it'll be in esports, but it's going to be a really cliche answer. But I genuinely mean it. Like, I just want to have an impact that's genuinely positive for esports as a whole, preferably for the UK scene, but like esports in general. I want to be able to walk away from this whenever that may be and go like, I did that thing in esports that's, you know, been a positive movement. And there's been, you know, moments where I think it starts to happen, you know, we win a trophy, some people get to smile because they support the team. You know, that's one example. But even just trying to support, I've spoken a lot about trying to support the UK scene wherever I have, whether it's having opinions on like the university scene for esports, let's say, or supporting, you know, other local events, trying to work with people in the UK industry and seeing how I can help grow them, whatever it may be. That's what I want to be my impact. So it's quite a generic answer, but I've this is the one thing I didn't expect to see, which has happened by joining esports. I've seen what esports can do for people out there in terms of it can be your tribe, your community, where perhaps you didn't have one at school or wherever you are. It can be a reason to smile and laugh and join in and be social with people from different backgrounds, different who you are, whatever. It doesn't matter what you are or who you are. You have your gamer name on your Discord and you get to, you know, be that person and just join up with everyone. And so it's just, again, it's just getting all cliche and all sad, but just seeing the amount of people find esports as a home for them as a fan, it's just been like, that's why I now love doing it. And it's become so much more than just, I want to make a career and I want to be successful. That's why I try to be quite vocal, like why I want to make UK esports better, because I've seen the happiness it can bring people who don't, you know, always get to experience that day-to-day life. So if I can leave a mark on that, I'll be very, very happy. I don't know if I'll still be in esports 5-10 years. I've always spoken about how much I love traditional sport, and this could be my way in. Who knows? You know, maybe, you know, happily say like still with Falcons in plenty of years to time. You know, I hope that's the case. I don't know where the career will go, but if I've left a mark positive, then I'm happy.
Yeah, positive mark on esports right now. We don't know what that's going to look like, how long it's going to last, but I guess in terms of that, what's your biggest lesson you've learned in esports in terms of the structure behind success? You know, you're a big believer in performance. Right now, there's a lot of people believing in the human sciences, the performance psychology, the fitness, nutrition, and everything like that. And there's obviously the grinding side of the game, which there's a balance to that. What would you say is the single biggest factor that has led to success in the teams that you've worked with?
So I'll give two sides. I'll give one for myself, and I'll give one for what I've seen that works. So for myself, personally, in my career, it's the classic, again, it's cliche, but it works, right? It's the fail fast, fail forward, right? Like, accept if things are going wrong, accept that something's failed. Like I said, I got fired and then I got relegated and I'm standing where I am. And those are my first two jobs. Like, failure is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a very good thing if you're willing to learn from it, if you're willing to reflect from it, accept it for what it is. And every failure is an opportunity. You know, talking what you just said about how you didn't get the analyst job and now you're actually going, well, actually, I love coaching and you're doing content. You know, there was an opportunity for you to make the most of it. So that's the biggest lesson for me personally. In terms of the performance structures of teams, it is always very, very simple for me. It's like, no matter what speed of success you want, you must always begin from a long-term plan and strategy and work backwards. And in esports, for me, I always say it used to be a 2-year plan. That's
the old Grant 2-year plan.
I mean, I got mean for the 2-year plan in League of Legends, but like, it was true. Like, and actually, ironically, now it's a 3-year plan because of what esports has got to in terms of resource size. So, you know, I've got a 3-year plan for CSGO with Falcons right now. Now they may want, you know, your team may want, hey, we want to win that next trophy, so here's a budget accordingly. But if you don't build with that in mind, you are always going to be making these short-term and quick decisions, which I think a lot of orgs make, which try to attract short-term success. And that's often the usual. Replace the roster, replace the coach, something like that. And what you're not thinking about is, well, let's say we want to win 5 trophies in 3 years' time rather than 1 now. How do we get to that point? And that's when you start to discuss things like performance structures and processes, your staff outside the coach and rosters, your facilities, your nutrition systems. And I've always spoken, I said this at Guild and Excel, like, everyone who works in every department in an organization contributes to 0.1%. Your marketing team contributes, your partnerships team contributes, all of that. And that's something that football do really well, is like they build the idea of performance that everyone contributes to Man City winning on a weekend, and they give that feeling across the club. That all comes from that long-term strategy you build backwards, and you realize everyone contributes. So it's probably the biggest thing. You know, you'll get your niches within that, but the meme of the 2-year, 3-year plan is real because that's what will allow you to build something successful.
Well, it's weird because the 2-year plan is what I was given at Vitality. It was you got.
Did I start something?
It was I had 4 seasons, so 2 years to turn a top 4 team into a world champion team.
Perfect.
And what we mentioned there about the whole structure involved, one of the biggest benefits we got was just before the Worlds, which we won, was all the staff coming together to support them in whatever way it was.
It all adds, yeah.
And it was giving the players merch early. So they had this whole big merch rollout. They're going to give it to all of their players, but it was going to be a month or 2 after the Worlds. And I said, if you can accelerate this to get it before our biggest event so far, and make sure they get everything, they'll feel happier. And I remember them all so proudly wearing their Vitality merch each day because they're like, I feel part of this now.
Exactly. And so someone in that merch department has just contributed 1% closer to winning. Like, it's true. It's just, we spoke about it at Guild. Like, if everyone gives 1% extra, that's 10%, 20%, etc. Everyone contributes. And that comes from, I say, right, 2-year plan. What works best? Oh, we need a merch thing this week, or we could use this thing that week. It all adds up.
It's all these little gains you get. And even that, the event before Worlds, we got to meet up with the CSGO team, and then the players meeting, I mean, at the time it was Zywoo, and they're like, oh my God, this guy's incredible. Meeting Apex. Or is it Apex? No.
Yeah, Apex.
Apex, yeah. There's so many Apexes in esports. And I was like, oh, you know, it's great to meet you, you know, and talking to the players, and then
learn a bit.
Oh, how much do you guys practice? Yeah. Oh, wow, you practice way more in CSGO than we do in Rocket League. I better go and grind. It's all these little minute things, and like going to an event, having a day to explore. You know, people look at, you know, go to an event, boot camp from the moment you arrive. We must play the game.
Well, that's it. If you're short-term minded, those things don't happen because you're just going like, roster's not working. What do we do? How do we do this? Replace the coach, change. Boot camp. We've given you a boot camp. You should be there every day, every hour. those minute moments to help grow a player or grow a team don't happen if you're in that day-to-day mindset.
It's like we're pros, we get to travel around the world to compete. Let's go have a look at New York. Why not? And like if they were playing that whole event and thinking, I didn't get a chance to see New York, they'd be like, oh, that's rubbish.
Oh, that sucks. Actually, maybe that would have helped them, with a bit of fresh air, would have helped their mental health for the day, or help them reset the team, or make them appreciate the job a bit more, so they grind a bit harder.
I'm just thinking like all those 1%ers for that world, and even the day we competed in the final day, the Sunday, we were the final quarterfinal, which was a lot later than the call time. So I begged for a good 30 minutes to the admins. I was like, let us get up a bit later. We'll walk over ourselves. You don't need to escort us. That's my job. Let me do this. We woke up an hour later. The players got a lie-in. I remember us turning up into the practice room. People were like, how did you manage to get here a bit later? It was like, I begged.
I fought for it. It's my job, like to fight for my team and do the extra 1%.
Yeah, and like having water on hold, and like the content team will be there and they'll want to film with the players, and the player will be like, I really don't want to do this right now. And then I'll be the one spending 15 minutes and being like, look, we can't do it now, we'll do it another time. Yeah, it's all those little things. And now you mention that 1%, that's where the passion is what guides you to those 1%.
You spot them. If you really care and love about what you do, you'll just spot them all as you just find, and that's it. And it's a mixture of experiences, a mixture of just like being fortunate to love what I do and you love what you do, that we're looking for those things.
Yeah.
But again, it also comes from the idea of like, because you're in a long-term strategy system, that level of like extreme pressure isn't on you, that you're actually looking out for these things. I've been in the pressure of we need a results now thing, and you just go down a tunnel. Like it doesn't work. So
yeah, giving someone who's passionate, who knows what they're doing, the rein to make the right decisions.
Support them and believe in them and their ideas.
Yeah, and then you can just trust them, and then the passion will carry them through those moments. Yeah, do you know what? That's really opened my eyes, and it's going to completely change the way I look at my next jobs that I do, whether it's coaching, whether it's on camera, whether it's whatever, just to try and think, or even this podcast, what are those little spots that you find as a passionate person? And I guess typically people will spot those things, but they might not act on them. Whereas if you're passionate, you'll spot them and you'll make an action straight away.
Yeah, because you're always like, I can be better at that. And it could be the stupidest thing. As you said, like water on the stage, more water than normal. It's just these tiny things, but if you're grateful enough to love what you're doing, be part of that, you will find those things and you will want to do them, and that will make you 1% better.
And thinking back, actually, sorry, this is just like blowing my mind, like reflectively. You mentioned,
part of it, I said you got to reflect on every aspect of what you do, because that's what makes you recognize what you love and find the mistakes. Yeah.
You mentioned about the see a mistake, never let it happen again. My bag of stuff that I carried around with me at events, in the final event I did with Vitality versus the first event, was completely different, because I remember I added a iPhone wire to the bag, even though I had an Android phone, because I knew that if my players needed it, I had a portable battery always. I remember one time K-Dop asked me for a tissue. I said, sorry, I don't carry tissues with me.
Now?
Never again. Always had a tissue on me.
Yeah.
And even like a backup bottle of water.
That's it. Yeah.
It's everything.
I always have 4 to 5 water, 4 to 5 energy drinks in my bag every time, no matter who I'm working with.
And I had my controller with me, because just in case, it's a backup controller, backup wire. It's just all these things that were just in my bag that I hadn't even processed until this moment just now, where you've gone, oh, you make a mistake, never make it again.
And you're thinking of that and going, I could do that better. And it sounds silly when you write it down on paper, bring an extra bottle of water. That sounds silly. But actually you're going, but that could mean they win the trophy. That could, that's performance.
And you wouldn't, if someone were to say to you or I before we put those things in our bags, oh, make sure you carry tissues with you, players might need it. That could trick your brains going, actually, we need that.
Yeah.
But until a player goes, hey, I need a tissue, and you go, oh, Drats didn't have it this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll get it next time.
Yeah.
So yeah, like all of that stuff. Hopefully people at home can apply that passion to whatever they do. It could be anything. It could be a job. Could be. I mean, you might even just work at a shop, and you could think, do you know what? This whole time I've been getting sick with the way we do things here. I'm going to change that. I'm going to turn up 5 minutes early and make sure it's never like that again. And those are the kinds of people who go far in life. So
I think it's important. I think again, I'm talking from a bit of a position of privilege because I'm working esports, and that is what it is. But if you can just find out whatever you do, like there's 1%ers each day, I think you'll gain so much joy out of it, because even if you say if you're working in a shop and you're just trying to do this, like I remember I worked in a flower shop at 15, like I worked all my summers, and I would just always try and think about, I'm a 15-year-old, I remember specifically 15-year-old trying to change how I presented the flowers out in the front of the shop and alter the prices according to sell flowers that were one day, you know, older than before and stuff like that. And then I remember one day my boss wanted to throw a set of flowers. I went, no, reduce it by £2. And next customer came and bought those flowers. And I know it sounds so silly because it's like, I wasn't passionate about flowers. It was a, you know, weekend job for me as 15-year-old. But it was just taking that moment, but I just want to do something a little bit better every day and focus on that and see what I can do. And you take a lot of joy out of that no matter what it is you're doing. So if you can find that, I recommend it because it gets you through the days and you feel better for it. You know,
I think the most applicable place I would see that is with something like Twitch streaming. There's so many people I see stream, and you watch their stream now and you watch it 6 months ago, it looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
They haven't changed anything. They haven't upgraded anything. They haven't adapted anything. And the ones who do end up blowing up or, you know, growing slowly over time are the ones who keep mixing things up, keep things fresh and new.
Yeah.
So yeah, a fair play to you for bringing so much knowledge and education onto this podcast. You know, we have a mixture of guests on here. We have people who've got amazing stories from, you know, their performances or the content they make. We've got people who've had some challenging times and they share those. I mean, you shared some here, but I think the ones that I really enjoy are those people who've got a lot of knowledge that they can share from their own experiences. Like you said, at one point you were not knowledgeable. In fact, you were the opposite. You were
I was awful.
You were awful. And so to be able to share your experiences and give people at home maybe some things to think about for themselves. Hopefully people can take stuff away from this. I guess
Appreciate it.
To finish off, Grant, we ask everyone, what does gaming mean to you?
Gaming or esports? I have to clarify because there's two different answers. Actually, I think I gave my esports answer about the whole smiling. Gaming for me is, it's a mixture of things. It's a way to escape. It's a way to unwind. It's a way to socialize. It's all these different aspects. And I know there's a lot of people still unsure of gaming out there. It's just a positive aspect of my life. That's what it is. And it's something that I love to do, that I've even made a career out of it on paper. And I'm very grateful for that. And it all just comes back from my parents introducing me to gaming and me just enjoying it. There's not much to it. I love gaming. I love all the aspects of it. It's changed from creative storylines as a kid to socialness as an adult. Without it, I wouldn't be who I am. So, you know, in that aspect, I like it. I don't really have an answer. It's a bit wishy-washy, but yeah, it's a part of my life that I'm grateful to have. Yeah, that's best way
you gave plenty an answer there. Hit loads of great points there, and again, thank you very much, Grant.
No, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I'll catch up with you afterwards. We go get some dinner now.
Absolutely, and then you can carry me in Rocket League.
Oh no, it's not happening.